For more than a century, cinema has tried to answer the same questions human beings have always asked: who we are, why we're here, and what it means to love or to suffer. Millions of stories have been filmed, but 99% of them will rot into oblivion. To reach the human soul, a story isn't enough. You need the absolute perfection of form. Every shot and every silence carved like a total work of art. Forget the soft IMDb tops and the politicized cliché critic lists. This is the definitive canon. Just as we study Shakespeare today through Hamlet, or Beethoven through the Ninth, in the future, these works will be the only trace of our genius, the highest point of art and of the human soul. Eight and a Half tells the crisis of Guido Anselmi, a director unable to finish his new film as his personal and creative life collapses. From that minimal premise, Fellini breaks classical storytelling and fuses memories, fantasies, dreams, and reality into a single stream of mind. Cinema becomes consciousness, not to tell a story, but to show the act of creating itself. It is the absolute mastery of mise en scène, proving that the soul's confusion can only be understood through the rigor of form. In 16th century feudal Japan, two brothers blinded by ambition abandon their families in search of wealth and military glory, only to discover that success is an illusion sheltered by tragedy. In Ugetsu, Mizoguchi doesn't just direct, he performs an act of magic. Through his legendary long takes, he makes the living and the dead coexist within the same frame without cuts or tricks. Cinema here is a mystical fog. Technical perfection is placed in the service of a devastating truth: that the love of the soul is often recognized only when it has already become a ghost. In 1960s Hong Kong, two neighbors discover that their partners are cheating on them. Out of that shared pain is born a silent, deep, restrained connection. They don't love from desire, but from mutual recognition. Two souls who meet in loneliness and decide not to betray themselves. Wong Kar-wai films a love that doesn't consummate because it is real, a bond that lives in gestures, in suspended time, and in what is never said. It is soul love that doesn't need to happen to be eternal. Here, the perfection of form reaches its peak. Every step and every corner, lit by the amber of lamps, is the architecture of a longing that transcends flesh to live, forever, in the viewer's memory. Harakiri follows an impoverished samurai who asks permission to commit suicide in the house of a powerful clan. What seems like a ritual of honor becomes a devastating indictment of the hypocrisy of power. It is cinema turned into a moral trial, where the perfection of form will strip bare the lie of a rotten system. Here, the human soul is measured by integrity in the face of death, in a work where every camera movement is a direct thrust into conscience. An angel who watches the melancholy of a divided Berlin falls in love with a mortal trapeze artist. To be with her, he must renounce his eternity and accept human fragility, pain, the passage of time, and finitude. Wim Wenders achieves here the definitive representation of our essence. The film begins in an ethereal black and white, the vision of angels who see everything but feel nothing, and then erupts into color when the protagonist decides to be human. It is cinema as pure metaphysics, a visual poem about the weight of existence and the beauty of the ephemeral. Wenders turns that choice into a profound reflection on existing, feeling, and the beauty of living. John Ford redefines the Western to explore one of the darkest characters in classical cinema. Through the obsessive search for a girl, the film speaks of racism, violence, and the impossibility of fitting into the world one helped build. Visually monumental and morally unsettling, it is a work about hatred, the frontier, and loneliness. The final shot, with Edwards walking away alone as the door closes, is the visual definition of solitude. It is cinema teaching us that there are journeys you never return from. Robert Bresson removes everything unnecessary to film freedom. There is no cheap dramatics here, only the precision of detail. The sound of a spoon scraping wood, sweat, hands. It is a film about the resistance of the human spirit in the face of the inevitable. Every shot is a lesson in visual economy, where sound narrates more than the image. An exercise in pure tension that proves that, with faith and patience, the thickest walls in the world can become transparent. The masterpiece of epic cinema. David Lean turns the desert into a mythical space where man confronts his own ego. Beyond the visual spectacle, the film is a deep study of identity, power, and moral contradiction. Lawrence is not a classic hero, but a fragmented character, trapped between greatness and guilt. Every shot breathes scale, but also loneliness. Total cinema in every sense. David Lynch takes cinema into the territory of dream, identity, and broken desire. What begins as a mystery in Hollywood turns into an emotional nightmare about illusion, failure, and the disintegration of the self. Every image seems logical until it stops being so, forcing the viewer to feel before understanding. It is one of the most radical explorations of the human mind ever filmed, and a work that grows with every rewatch. Terrence Malick transforms an intimate story into a cosmic meditation on existence. Childhood, family, love, and death converse with the origin of the universe in a work that breaks classical narrative to search for something deeper. A meditation on grace versus nature, on the pain of loss, and on the immensity of the divine. It isn't just a film, it's a visual poem that forces you to look up and ask what it really means to be alive.
No trouble. Kid stuff.
Leone's saddest work. A requiem about time, betrayal, and memories that rot. Through the smoke of opium, we follow Noodles on a journey spanning decades, where gangster violence is only the backdrop for a story about the loss of innocence. Morricone's score elevates every scene into something sacred. It is the final testament of a director who understood that if we live out of alignment, in the end, we are left only with the shadows of what we could have been. Tess is the closest thing cinema has given us to Romeo and Juliet. A woman with a pure heart recognizes her one true love, but social norms, hypocritical morality, and human judgment crush vulnerable souls. Polanski adapts Thomas Hardy with a painterly sensitivity that seems to capture the light of the Flemish masters, one of the peaks of visual preciousness, where every shot is a painting, every shadow a lament. Nastasia Kinski embodies the tragedy of purity in the face of a cruel world. Cinema that affirms that the only true love transcends even life and death. The definitive portrait of the end of an era. Visconti, an aristocrat filming the decadence of the aristocracy, creates an unmatched atmosphere of melancholic opulence. The ballroom scene isn't just pure technique, it's the heart of the film. A world dying as another is born, changing everything so that nothing changes. It is historical cinema turned into existential reflection, where visual beauty coexists with a deep melancholy. Dreyer dares to film the impossible, the miracle of faith in a world ruled by reason and rigid dogma. With an antiseptic formal rigor, the camera moves with an almost divine slowness through the corridors of a house where death lurks. In an austere, cold landscape, the film builds a spiritual tension that explodes in one of the most powerful endings in cinema history. A spiritual experience that defies all logic. It is the definitive proof that the cinematic image can reach metaphysical dimensions, making the viewer believe, if only for an instant, that life can defeat death. Bergman's Living Testament is a celebration of the light and shadows of childhood. Through the eyes of two children, we explore the joy of living against the rigidity of religious fanaticism. Bergman condenses his entire filmography into his magnum opus: theater, family, ghosts, and the weight of authority. Visually rich and emotionally overflowing, it is a love letter to imagination as a refuge from the cruelty of the world. A total work that embraces magic and pain. Bresson performs the miracle of making us feel the weight of the world through the eyes of a donkey. Balthazar is the silent witness to cruelty, sanctity, and human misery. Without resorting to sentimentalism, the film becomes an allegory of undeserved suffering and purity against sin. Every shot is an exercise in absolute stripping down, proving that you don't need acting theatrics to reach transcendence. A mystical experience that forces us to confront our own capacity for cruelty and redemption. Martin Scorsese's masterpiece. The director turns the biography of a boxer into a Shakespearean tragedy of self-destruction. Jake LaMotta fights in the ring, but above all against himself. The black and white, the brutal editing, and the sound turn every bout into a physical experience. De Niro delivers a terrifying physical and psychological transformation about jealousy, egoic masculinity, and self-hatred. It is redemption sought through physical punishment, a visual poem about the fall of an idol who discovers, too late, that his worst enemy was never outside the ring. Tarkovsky plunges us into a devastated medieval Russia to ask whether art can survive in a world full of violence and sin. The film is a mystical journey from the artist's silence to the final eruption of color. Every shot is a spiritual revelation that searches for beauty in the middle of the mud. It is cinema you don't just watch, you inhabit. A work that demands patience to gift you one of the deepest experiences art can offer.
Sniveling boy! I am the third revelation! I am the third revelation!
Paul Thomas Anderson films a modern Macbeth without castles or crowns, only ambition, power, and absolute loneliness. Daniel Plainview is a tragic figure who rises as he empties from within until triumph becomes condemnation. Anderson's direction is biblical in scale, supported by Johnny Greenwood's unsettling music that sounds like an industrial nightmare. It is a film about hatred as the engine of progress and loneliness as the final destiny. A duel of wills that feels like a visual earthquake. Modern cinema reached its highest point here, up to this moment. Yasujiro Ozu films the invisible, the passage of time, the distance between parents and children, and the serene sadness of the inevitable. The journey of elderly parents to the city to visit their children reveals the silent disappointment of a family life without soul. With his camera at floor level and his unhurried rhythm, Ozu captures the sad beauty of the ephemeral. There are no big dramas, only time passing and the acceptance of solitude. Cinema made human, a work that whispers universal truths about pity and forgetting. We enter sacred territory. Forget what you thought you knew about cinema. These 10 works are not recommendations. They are the unmovable canon of our species. A descent into technical perfection and ontological truth that only a few have been able to film. The rest is entertainment. This is eternity. Kurosawa films chaos from a divine distance, transforming Shakespeare's tragedy into a visual spectacle that pushes the limits of color and mise-en-scène. It isn't just a film about war. It is a canvas where human ambition is stained with an unforgettable blood red. The use of green meadows against yellow and blue banners creates a pictorial composition unique in cinema history. Every shot is a choreography of destruction and beauty, where silence weighs as much as the thunder of horses. It is the portrait of a descent into madness, filmed by a master who was practically blind, who chose to give us the definitive image of personal apocalypse. A monumental work that feels like the end of the world, seen through the eyes of an old man who has already understood everything. Kubrick achieves absolute technical perfection here by using NASA lenses to shoot solely by candlelight, creating a texture no digital sensor will ever replicate. It is an odyssey about the rise and fall of a mediocre man, told with a mathematical coldness that paradoxically is devastating. A portrait of the human being trying to fill himself with power and money, ignoring the true beauty of life, love, nature, and his own soul. Hitchcock turns suspense into obsession and love into an illness. The film dissects male desire, idealization, and the impossibility of possessing the other without destroying them. The visual form, colors, camera movements, music, expresses what the characters cannot say. It is a work about looking and being looked at, about confusing love with control. Over the years, it revealed its true nature. Not a thriller, but a devastating psychological tragedy. Coppola didn't film a movie about Vietnam. He filmed war itself devouring civilization. It is Dante's descent into hell between napalm and Wagner. A symphony of operatic destruction where technical ambition reached suicidal levels to capture human madness. Every shadow of Marlon Brando is testimony to the horror that lives in the hearts of men. Cinema as a total sensory experience, a psychedelic and savage journey into the core of our darkness.
Do you mind if I sit down?
The definitive film about love. Paris, Texas is not about being together, but about recognizing each other at the level of the soul. Travis is a man who loves with such intensity that he must first empty himself out. Wenders films silence, distance, and the gaze with devastating purity. Every shot is waiting. Every word carries weight. The staging has no precedent in cinema history. Every color represents an emotion, and every landscape a fragment of the soul. There is no forced drama, and no easy redemption, only truth. The mirror climax, as I analyzed in a video, is the greatest scene ever filmed. It is a masterpiece because it understands that the only true love is ontological, a connection that cannot be erased by distance or time, but that doesn't always mean being together physically. The most perfect tragedy in cinema. Coppola elevated the crime genre to the level of high art, filming a story of family, power, and moral corruption. It is the portrait of how the system corrupts even the purest soul. Every shot is charged with a religious solemnity, where shadows hide the sins of a man who becomes king in exchange for his humanity. Cinema was never again so elegant, so deep, or so definitive. Tarkovsky breaks the linearity of time to film memory itself. There is no traditional plot, only recollections, dreams, childhood, guilt, and time flowing without order. It is cinema not seen with the eyes, but with the spirit, where water, fire, and wind speak the language of the subconscious. Every image is a mystical revelation that connects the author's childhood with the history of a nation. A work that demands patience to gift you one of the deepest experiences art can offer a human being. The Big Bang of modern cinema. Orson Welles didn't just direct a film. He invented the language of modern cinema at 25. He created deep focus and non-linear structure to tell the life of a man who had everything and had nothing. It's a puzzle about identity and the void power leaves behind. Every shot in this film was an innovation that still lives in every frame we watch today. Cinema started speaking seriously here, and everything that came after was born here. The film that contains all cinema within it. Kurosawa turns a simple story into a total exploration of heroism, community, and sacrifice. Every character is defined with perfect dramatic clarity. Every scene advances with a surgical precision that dictated the laws of modern epic narrative. At 3.5 hours long, Kurosawa makes every shot a masterpiece of composition and rhythm. But his true legacy is technical. The pioneering use of multiple cameras and the dynamic editing that gives the final battle in the rain a physical fury no one has matched in 70 years. It is cinema that breathes, that suffers, and that dignifies the human condition. It is formal perfection in the service of universal compassion, the genetic map of all epic storytelling that came after. A work so complete, it left no room to be surpassed, only reinterpreted. The greatest film in the history of cinema. 2001 doesn't perfect a genre, it transcends cinema itself. Kubrick removes traditional narration to create a pure experience where image, sound, and time replace story. Here, cinema stops telling stories and begins to think. From the origin of humanity to the leap into the unknown, the film tackles evolution, infinity, and the divine without a single concession to the viewer. It isn't a film about space. It's a metaphysical experience that uses image and music symphonically to question our place in the cosmos. It is the most refined technical work ever created, with practical effects that, 50 years later, still shame modern CGI. It is the work that proved cinema could reach the same level as philosophy, music, or science. Everything else dialogues with it. Nothing has surpassed it. This is not a ranking to agree with. It is the map of the peaks humanity has reached when technique and soul align perfectly. If you felt the weight of these images, subscribe and explore this refuge. I'm back. See you in the eternity of cinema.